Welcome everyone to the first episode of The Chopping Block, which is going to be the brand new Rutgers podcast here on Garden State Sports. My name is Andrew Hefner, your host, alongside Dylan Shaw, who is the Rutgers insider and super fan for Garden State Sports here. Dylan, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andrew.
Yeah, so we're going to dive right into what was a pretty exciting matchup last night. From the outside, I'm by no means a Rutgers fan. I by no means watched them every day of my life for the past however many years you've been alive, Dylan. But you have. And I know for you last night, that game was not necessarily the funnest for you, practically past halftime. So we'll definitely go into what went wrong for Rutgers, but also what went right, because 34 points against a team that pretty much steamrolled the MAC last year is not a feat that will go unnoticed, especially for a team that's looking to have a huge season after what many would consider was a pretty successful one last year. So we'll dive right into it, starting with talking about Ohio. And one of the first things that the announcers mentioned about the game last night was Ohio was running a completely new defensive line. Not a single one of the starters out there was on their defensive line last year. And despite that, it seemed that there were some struggles from the Rutgers offensive line early where there was a lot of pressure being put on the QB and that running back duo, which we'll get to in a little bit. So do you think that it's just kind of a lucky start from the Ohio defensive line, or that the Rutgers offensive line still needs to work some things out?
Well, as you said, and it's not just their D lines, actually their front six, pretty sure, was all new players. So obviously it's going to be like chemistry wise, and they're not going to dial up the same pressure first game. But in the first quarter, Rutgers quarterback Athan Kaliakmanis was dealing with pressure in your face, as you said. But he's an experienced quarterback. It's his final year in college. He's second year at Rutgers, and he's been with this offensive coordinator Kirk Shiraka from Minnesota, and now to Rutgers. So he's an experienced quarterback. He can make the throws, and which showed yesterday. And you would think that like the Ohio D line, if they were all new, they wouldn't get too much pressure. And our O line, we're returning a lot of starters with a few different pieces, but returning a lot of starters. And that showed. We got the passes off, the running game. Yeah, in between the tackles, Antoine Raymond, star sophomore running back, the place of Kyle Monungai, our seventh round pick to the Bears. He played great. He's a speedy back who also has power to him. And to pair him alongside CJ Campbell Jr., transfer from FAU, who's more of a pass catching back, but he has running capabilities, obviously, racking up almost 900 yards on the ground last year in FAU. It showed they were great two headed monster running back duo. And the O line, if they can block like that, if they can set up the run plays as they did yesterday, this is going to work against Big Ten opponents as well. Ohio is no walkover. They put up 31 on us. They may have given up 34, but this is the best Rutgers offense that I have personally watched as a fan. I've been watching for a decade, maybe 11 years or so, and this is like the first offense that I can confidently say that they will get me 7 points on most drives. We
Yeah,
probably best. This is Athan Kaliakmanis is probably the best quarterback since Gary Nova, who graduated in 2014 and 2015. And as a Rutgers fan, it's breathing a sigh of relief, just finally having an offense that we can rely on after all these years of averaging 17 points, 20 points, just constantly knowing that we're never going to win a game because of how bad our offense is. So this was a great sign.
yeah, and for the specifics on that first drive there, Ohio actually did get a quick sack pretty early on in the drive, and then provided a lot of pressure on a 3rd and 3 in the red zone, which prevented a touchdown pass potentially there. But later on, so it goes to 4th and 3. And then for the second time in the first drive of the game, head coach Greg Schiano chooses to go for it on 4th down, and that decision becomes a major factor pretty late in the game, as well as he kept up that strategy of going for it in 4th and down and having trust in his offense. And he went 5 for 5 on 4th down attempts throughout the game, including one 4th and 7 with 154 left in the game. He was able to convert, which allowed Rutgers to kneel out the game. Do you like this new strategy and I guess new boldness, we could say, from the Rutgers coaching staff? And how do you think that that's going to take them through, especially their Big Ten schedule this year?
I love the bold style. You're not going to win a game just playing soft, punting the ball back to them. I mean, what we did, we took a sack around midfield of the opening drive, and it led to like a 3rd and 14, 3rd and 15. And what I thought was it was a simple play, but it was a very key play in that drive. And even in the end of the game, barring was only a 3-point game in the end. It was these crossing routes that kind of clear out the entire side of the field and just leave one of our big receivers out in the open to gain like 10 to 11 yards. And it worked 3 or 4 times in the game, but especially on that first drive, where on 3rd and 15, instead of dialing up a big throw to the sticks, we Athan Kaliakmanis just threw a short pass, dumped it off to Ian Strong, and he took it for 10, 11 yards after the catch. And that set up a nice 4th and 3 where DT Sheffield, star transfer out of North Texas, just caught the ball a couple yards short, made a move, which he's known for, and got to the first down marker. And this boldness that Kirk Shiraka and Greg Schiano are using in the offense just shows how much trust they have in them, which is another great sign to see. Because even though this is the same coaching that we've had last year, same coaches, except obviously defensive coordinator, but on the offensive side, but they would never do this because they didn't have as much trust in this offense as they do now. And I know it's just Ohio, but they wouldn't do it even against our lower opponents last year. So as a fan, seeing them have this trust is amazing, and it's paying off. They scored on a 4th and 3 when Antoine Raymond took it 12 or 13 yards to the house, and that's great O line blocking, but it's also great decision making.
Yeah, I think watching kind of from an outside perspective, I was surprised how often they just kept going back to it. Especially on, I mean, that 4th and 7 play to really seal the game there at the end was also, interestingly enough, a pass off to DT Sheffield, who we'll dive into a little bit more later. But I think that the ability now with Kaliakmanis in his second year with a like relatively the same receiving core, of course. Sheffield was the transfer in, but Ian Strong, Duff, those two guys are really going to be a core two that he's worked with already before. I think that having that kind of cohesiveness on the offensive side of the ball, especially with your stars, is going to be big for kind of their success this year. But we could dive a little more into the running back room as well, because you touched on it a bit already. Antoine Raymond had the first touchdown of the season for Rutgers, and CJ Campbell had an extremely strong game as well. And also, Jashawn Benjamin is going to be another guy that they say might get in there a bit. I believe he's entering his junior year now, and he was actually a kick returner for a little bit last night, and I think had a 27-yard kick return. So it's not like we didn't see much out of him last night. It was only 3 carries, but compared to the other two, his minutes have definitely been lacking. But overall, CJ Campbell and Antoine Raymond have looked to be the core two up in the backfield, you would think, right?
What I do like about these two running backs is that there's not just one running back that's gonna like take all the snaps and take all the carries. Last night, Antoine Raymond had 14 carries for 88 yards, averaging 6.3 a carry. And but Campbell, CJ Campbell Jr., he kind of went under the radar. It seemed like Raymond was getting a lot of the major carries, but he had 10 carries, 70 yards, and 7 yards a carry. That's all you need out of running back. We average around 6.5 yards a carry between those two. That's what we need going to the season because having a variety of running backs is going to be key against the Big Ten opponents. And clearly, the coaching staff has faith in these two, and they're going to split carries. They're going to get ample time to play, and we'll see really if they can keep this up against better opponents.
Yeah, I think that also just that tandem back there really would probably be scary for a Ohio defense that's really been revamped recently. And I know that there were a lot of talks about how Rutgers would go in and adapt from losing Monagai, obviously, to the draft because he was really their star of the last couple of seasons, and then Isaiah Pacheco before that. And now you're left with with one pretty young running back and then a transfer student to kind of pick up where two now NFL level caliber running backs have left Rutgers. So were you at all scared going into the game or going into the season about where the running back room would be or how the run play would work with at Rutgers this year?
If I want to give you my honest answer, not at all. Because last year in the bowl game against Kansas State, which we did lose by 3 points, Kyle Monangai sat out to prepare for the combine. and Antoine Raymond was given the starting role. He just went off with 100 plus yards on the ground, a couple touchdowns, showing flashes of Kyle Monangai greatness for the team. He almost single handedly got us the win. And you just had a feeling that this guy was going to be special. As a freshman doing that, knowing that he's going to get a full summer of practice, get the starting reps, and it's proving. There's a few things I wanted to talk about negatively on the running game that I did not like watching last night. First, I'm going to start with these option runs. The option runs were not working yesterday. And this is kind of a staple in the Kirk Shiraka, Greg Schiano offense. We ran it a lot last year, and they love going back to it. It doesn't make sense to me. Yesterday, Kaliakmanis, 5 rushes for -4 yards. Granted, that's a few sacks, so probably. I think that they can account for that. But he didn't get anything going in the running game. They kept doing these options, the read options, and they would keep it, hold it, and you'd get 1, 2 yards maximum. But I don't understand why they wouldn't test the Ohio defense because they weren't able to stop Campbell and Raymond most times. And I have more trust in those two to get the yards than Calic Menace, and he's not even a proficient runner. He's an average runner, not too fast, not too agile. So I don't see the reasoning behind those calls. And secondly, in the first half, it was working. All the runs were working with the running backs up through the middle, inside, in between the hash marks, outside the hash marks. Everything was working. But in the second half, Ohio made some adjustments, and in between the hash mark runs were not working. They were stuffing it for 1 to 2 yards, and countless times throughout the third and fourth quarter, I was like thinking to myself, run outside the hashes, run outside the hashes. You have the bigger tight ends. You have the better matchups on the receiver corner. Just run outside the hash to see if it works. And they wouldn't do it. They would go back to these option runs. And then once on the final drive where we closed it out up three, they did one outside the hashes run and went for 20 yards for CJ Campbell. And I think these simple fixes can work so much because you're playing Ohio. Anyone can stop you up the middle if they get a good push. And if the linebackers just crash the A gap, they can stop you up the middle. But outside the hash marks is where you test the actual talent of some of these um, group of five players. And clearly, when we did it, it worked. So, yes, it's a negative, but they did do it later in the game. So, hopefully, they can take that and maybe fix that for next week's game against Miami, Ohio.
Yeah, and also with the receiving trio that they've seemed to build there as well. I mentioned Kaliakmanis going into now his second year with the team. Do you sense him being more comfortable at all with kind of the receiving core that's now around him?
Completely. Last year at the end of the beginning of the season, we were kind of rusty, kind of like they obviously new quarterback jitters, and it was the game against UCLA, maybe USC, but more UCLA, where the Rutgers offense put up 32 points. We did lose the game, 35-32, but we put up 32 points, and you could see how Cali Menace was kind of growing into his role in this offense, delivering the throws he has to make as a Big Ten quarterback. And the rest of the season, he was pinpoint accuracy, pinpoint, never messing up on simple throws. It felt like you could trust him at any time you wanted to throw it. And we ended the season 4-1, I believe, with a heartbreaking loss to Illinois in the last second touchdown for them to win it. And this he carried the momentum into the bowl game, carried the momentum today. Yesterday, he averaged 11 yards to throw on 18 of 23 attempts for 252 yards and 2 touchdowns. Can't get much better than that. That's just how he's showing. He's developing it into this offense. Ian Strong, returning leading receiver from last year. He's a big junior. He's put on a lot of muscle. He's gotten stronger, faster. AJ Duff, he's a sophomore now. He was a true freshman last year. And you could tell he has some drop issues. He was messing up on some of his routes. He was obviously having just some freshman problems that every freshman has. But now he's a sophomore, and yesterday he had his career yards in the passing game, going for 5 catches for 54 yards and 1 touchdown. And then you throw in DT Sheffield, our new transfer. This is the best receiving core that we've seen in a decade as well. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't see this offense slowing down ever.
yeah. I mean, what do you think the balance is really going to look like then between that receiving core that has looked pretty strong so far, and then these two running backs that are really going to be eager to go at it for the whole season?
Almost exactly what you saw yesterday. A staple in the former Rutgers offense was run first down, run on second down, and either run on third down if it's third and short, or do some bad pass play and then punt it. That's a staple. That's what we've all been accustomed to. It's like, okay, we're just gonna punt the ball. We almost knew this was not gonna end in a touchdown. But now it's like, okay, we're gonna come out and throw it on first down. Even if it's 9 yards down the field, not 20 yards down the field, we're still kind of trying to like make the defense think and not just let them like guess run and just stuff us up the middle. I really think the balance that they showed yesterday is almost what they want to go in later in the year. I think the play calls can use some work, like I said, the option runs, where they're running, and like. But the receivers, they're gonna get open against any comp they play. And Kaliakmanis loves to spread the ball. Only 5 people caught passes yesterday, but our receivers don't go 4 or 5 deep. They mainly stay 3 deep, maybe 4. And if your 3 receivers are gonna get open every time, why spread it to other people? We have 2 good tight ends in Colin Weber and Kenny Fletcher Jr. Kenny Fletcher Jr. entering his second year after suffering a season-ending injury midway through the season last year. He's a converted defensive end to tight end, and he's a great pass catcher. Yesterday, he's 1 catch for 6 yards, went on kind of just like play action rollout just to dump off, and that's also a staple in this offense. They showed it a lot last year, and I can see Fletcher getting involved in the offense more. So 4 to 5 receivers deep, maybe like 2 to 3 running backs deep, and that's really what's going to get us to the promised land. You don't want to extend the depth chart too much. You want to stick with what you know is good and what you got. So I like the play calling, and yeah.
Yeah, so we're now going to dive into a little bit of what I would say is going to be your less favorable parts of last night's matchup, but something that a lot of people seem to have hope in going into the season. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, new defensive coaching, new defensive coordinator, a lot of new transfer students, some even coming from the enemy yesterday from Ohio who seemed like they could have made a big difference. But in the end, they did surrender 31 points, and did make it a close game, which I don't think many people were expecting after Rutgers put up 31 points early. So what were your main, I guess, flaws that you noticed with the Rutgers defense to start, and how can they kind of remedy that heading into the next couple of weeks?
So first, I just want to point out the key transfers that we pulled in because we lost so many defensive stars from last year. The transfer portal and mostly graduation. So one, we have Jet Elad, safety out of UNLV. We have um, as you said, Bradley Weaver, defensive end from Ohio. We have Eric O'Neill, defensive end from James Madison, and Cam Miller, cornerback DB from Penn State. So those are the 4 major ones that just kind of come off the top of my mind. And they're supposed to be like big difference makers in the defense. And yeah, there's not just 4 people who's gonna make a big change. And clearly that was seen yesterday. The defense just couldn't hang. They really couldn't hang. This is not a good sign at all because we're playing Ohio. We're not playing Ohio State. We're not playing Penn State, which is later to come in the season. We're playing Ohio. And that's not going to work. Yes, Parker Navarro, 5th-year quarterback, 4th-year quarterback, stayed with head coach of Ohio, left to Charlotte. He stayed with the program. And clearly it's working. He absolutely diced us up yesterday. Through the air, Parker Navarro had 21 of 31 attempts, 239 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But mostly he did his damage on the ground. 9 yards, 93 yards, and a touchdown. And all that came in the second half. Almost every yard of that came in the second half. And that's an adjustment they made at half. I don't think we played the run at all. Like, I don't understand what we're doing. There's no QB spy on the field. Every time on third down, I saw it maybe 3 or 4 times. We would send a blitz, try to knock it home, and Navarro would scramble out to the left or the right. There'd be no linebacker there to pressure him, no corner to pressure him. He would either take off for 10, 20 yards, or if someone did come up to pressure, he would just dump it off. On one of the touchdowns, I believe this was the one to tie it up at 31. They sent 2 linebackers at him to provide pressure, but sophomore safety Todd Sanders, I don't know why, this made no sense to me. He decided to also pressure Navarro instead of running with the tight end who was streaking down the field. And Navarro, as an experienced quarterback, made the dump off for like a 15-yard touchdown, which is something that like seems like such a simple fix, like such a simple thing for like a college safety to do. But for some reason, it wasn't clicking yesterday. And that's not a good sign because I don't know what they're doing in practice. If this offense looks so good, I feel like the offense has to be destroying the defense in practice. There has to be something to fix because next week against the Miami Ohio Redbirds, I'm sorry, I don't know, but they also have a scrambling dual threat quarterback. And yesterday they got shut out by Wisconsin 17-0. But I bet you Wisconsin's defense is significantly better than whatever we showed out yesterday.
Yeah, and I think the commentators mentioned that the safety thought it might have been a run play or something, or Navarro was going to scramble out. But I mean, I feel like that's just textbook. You're looking at, and even the first touchdown where they responded to the opening drive touchdown is the tight end again, kind of in a similar situation where he was just able to kind of make the catch in wide open field, take a little bit of time to break a tackle from the defenders, and just go in for an easy six. And it seems like it's these red zone situations, and it's especially when you have a quarterback like Parker Navarro. You started to talk about it a little bit, but he is one of the best dual threat quarterbacks, I think, in all of college football, and he definitely put that on display yesterday because no one knew what was happening. I mean, you're looking at this Rutgers defense, and really, I don't think anyone ever knew where he was going to go. Because even if he did scramble out left or right, maybe he was looking like he was going to try to run out of the pocket, he would still find a way to dump it off and make some miraculous toss to one of his receivers who turned around at the right time. There was a lot of luck, I think, early on in the game for him, but once he was able to really put his feet down and drive, and I mean, even I think his longest rush yesterday was 28 yards. He was like cutting up our secondary like a top wide receiver or running back might. So, not really sure what I guess the way to approach that is. I think Parker Navarro is a special case in some ways when it comes to the type of offense they're running with. Ohio, of course, is a new head coach there. He's looking to make some changes as well. He's looking to maybe run some more interesting plays, which he certainly did. But I mean, I feel like that's unacceptable from a Rutgers defense that was really supposed to show a lot of promise in the opening game.
No, I completely agree. And it's just kind of, I don't know if it's communication. I don't know what it is, but like we only got two stops all game against a group of five team from the MAC. I don't care if they're the best MAC team. I don't care if they're the worst MAC team. We should always be getting more than two stops against a group of five team. But granted, first half they had a lot of third down conversions, third and long. One of them on the opening drive on a 3rd and 8, quarterback Parker Navarro threw like a laser pass over the middle to star receiver Chase Hendricks, who I do want to mention in a second. And Cam Miller, our transfer DB, got a hand in it, tipped it, but instead of it hitting the ground, hit the receiver's leg. He caught it off the tip for a first down. Some things like that you can't control. In the first drive, I was like, okay, it's okay. They scored a touchdown. It's kind of lucky. But the rest of the game, they got no stops practically, and the only stop they got was I don't even know what the play call was for Ohio, but it was like a 3rd and long on the drive when they were down three, and they did some like they caught the snap. I don't know where Navarro was trying to like roll out and throw it or trying to QB scramble, but it got clogged up and we got a sack. Right, that was, in my opinion, very lucky. That definitely was not the play call. Some personnel, some confusion, and that was our second stop. He got us the ball back. We won the game. Obviously, great. We won the game. It's better to be 1-0 than 0-1. But there's just no signs of hope as a fan watching this defense get just picked apart by Ohio. Chase Hendricks, star receiver who also stayed at Ohio, which is very surprising as their head coach did leave. But Chase Hendricks stays. He won 9 catches, 115 yards for 12 and a half average yards like reception. That is completely unacceptable. That someone's gonna catch 9 balls on us for 115 yards. This is a group of five team we're talking about. I am extremely nervous for when we play Iowa in week 4. That they're gonna have insane amount more talent than Ohio. And if we can't stop them, I don't know who we're gonna stop. So the hopes of this defense for a fan is not looking good. So they need to fix something because we have the pieces. I just maybe think it's like a chemistry thing. They haven't played a lot together. We have the pieces and we have the coaches. We have everything. We should be better. And one more thing, it could. This is just Rutgers fan, probably rambling, but our new head defensive coordinator hires Rob Smith.
Yeah.
And Rob Smith is familiar with the Rutgers program. He has been hired and fired like two, three times in his career by Rutgers, which makes no sense to me while we keep bringing him back. And over the offseason when we hired him, Joe Harris Masiak left us to go take the head coaching job in Maine. Good for him. He was amazing. He produced countless Rutgers defenses that were stellar. We just never had an offense. But Rob Smith hiring him, it makes no sense. You kept firing him. You know he does not fit well in the Rutgers program. And it's evident. Yesterday, nothing worked. And that's on him. He's the defensive coordinator. Can't blame Shiano. You can blame the player sometimes, but he is to blame. And I think this is why he's been fired. And I think Rutgers fans are going to put up a big fight about this if this happens again next week. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But I do not like the defense.
Yeah, and you mentioned Cam Miller there. I just want to point out his, I guess, better highlight from the game yesterday, the scoop and score on the blocked punt, which I guess really was more at the fault of the snapper who snapped it right at the punter's legs, and by then the special teams was already pretty much on him. But I think that having that kind of all around team, I guess, besides the defense is rough because the special teams is performing. You mentioned to me how Patel, who's the kicker, has really become kind of a star with Rutgers fans now, and how
Hey,
I think he broke the record for most consecutive field goals.
shout out Jay Patel. 31 was the record. 32 after last night. 32 field goals in a row, breaking the record, which is it's amazing. He's from New Brunswick, from like it's a hometown kid. He's he's had his ups and downs, but 32 field goals in a row is amazing, no at whatever level you're kicking at. So shout out him and shout out Rutgers special teams. We've had the most block punts in all of D1 and all of FBS for the past 5 years. That's 15 or something. I think the stat was.
Hmm.
Hey, I know yesterday was a botched snap low, and we were already there, as you said, but it's still 15 block punts. So shout out special teams coordinator and the special teams personnel. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably one of the more exciting moments of the game, along with the offensive production. But like you said, heading into next week with the Miami of Ohio, what were they again? Like
I believe the Red Hawks. Let me
Red
double check
Hawks. All
that.
right, we'll check it out. But that's gonna be a 3:30 game once again in
Yeah,
New
Red Hawks.
Jersey for at SHI Stadium, where Rutgers will have the home field advantage once again. We're going to have more of an in-depth breakdown probably next Friday about the upcoming game. Obviously, we know that you want some defensive changes. Is there anything else you're going to be looking for in practice this week as they kind of prepare for what's to come?
Again, Miami, Ohio. Let me double check his name. Is led by a dual threat quarterback. Again, put up 0 points yesterday. But it's not a bad team when they made the MAC championship yesterday, or last year. So quarterback's name Daquan Finn. Daquan Finn is a dual threat quarterback. Yesterday he only passed for 83 yards on 50% completion with 2 interceptions, and ran 12 carries, 13 yards, which is abysmal. But we'll see. Wisconsin defense is much better, but I'm not looking for too much. I'm really looking at the defense. This offense, I want to shout out before. I don't know if we mentioned this. The 4th and 7 to win the game. Never should have been in that scenario to start with, but when the way it went is that we didn't get it on third down, and we ran it. We ran on 3rd and 15, and I'm like, I was talking to my dad. I'm like, let's run this ball, get 8, 9 yards, and go for it. Just win the game. If we don't win the game, we're gonna lose. I don't care. I don't trust the defense even to stop them from a touchdown. Because if we kicked a field goal, it would have been a 6 point game. Even they would have scored. I guarantee you it. And at first, Jay Patel was walking out to kick the field goal, and Ohio called a timeout, I believe. Before, not even to ice it, just called a timeout to stop the clock. And after the timeout break, we saw the offense out there, and I just knew they were gonna. I knew this was the right decision, and it worked out. Athan Kaliakmanis to DT Sheffield for 8, 9 yards to win the game. I mean, that's just textbook. So I'm really happy with how that went. But yeah, we'll look to next week, hoping for some improvements in the defensive side of the ball, and take that momentum to Norfolk State, which should be a win, and then start the conference play. It's next week is the week we need to get by. We get by next week, there's momentum going into the season. So let's hope that goes well.
Yeah, well, thank you everyone so much for tuning in to the first recap episode of the Chopping Block with Garden State Sports. Dylan is going to be doing some writing, especially on Rutgers, and look out for maybe some opinion work from him as well throughout the season. You can see it's been on screen the whole time. GardenStateSports.substack.com, where you can find all of the articles about a bunch of different New Jersey sports, not just football. But we're going to be especially busy heading into football season because Rutgers is back. Princeton will be back at the end of this month. Monmouth will be back soon. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a fun season. Thank you so much, Dylan, for joining me again for this first recap episode. Hopefully, we'll be back to seeing you next Friday for a breakdown of the Miami of Ohio game. And yeah, any final words?
No, thanks for having me. See you next week.
Yeah, so see you all next week. Thank you for listening.